I love historic properties. I've always loved them. I remember falling in love with them, going to Colonial Williamsburg in 4th grade, and thinking, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a part of, that storytelling. And I think that that's something that historic houses do really well. My name's Jackie Spainauer. I'm the director at the Hunter House Victorian Museum in downtown Norfolk. You are standing in the only Victorian house that you can actually tour in the area. The museum itself actually opened in the late 80s, but the house was built in 1894, and it only belonged to one family. They lived their entire lives in this house, all generations. The children never had children, so essentially they had no one to leave it to, and they had a huge collection of Victorian era belongings, and they decided to make this a museum. Everything we have here is original to the family. We don't take a whole lot of donations, so when you're walking through this house, you're really experiencing what life would have been like for them at the turn of the century. Yeah, the Victorian era was really interesting because people had this sort of sense of propriety where they had to be able to move through life with a sense of order, and everything had its own set of rules. Were a Victorian lady, for instance, and you moved into a neighborhood, you as the woman of the home, there was this whole system called calling cards, and you had these little calling cards, look like business cards with your name on them. Everybody had their own. And if you moved into the neighborhood, you would take your card and you would take it in person to all of the places in the neighborhood, and then you would know very quickly which basically part of the social stratosphere you belong to based on how those calls are returned. So if someone sent their servant down with a card, then that told you that you were below that person. If that person came down to you in person, then that told you you were on the same social level. Very full life here. They did a lot of socializing. But interestingly enough, the girls here, there were 2 girls and a boy who were the children, and none of them ever married. We only know of one sort of beau that one of the women had, and we eventually looked him up and figured out he had actually married somebody else. So they didn't leave us any diaries, didn't leave us any, paper trails or anything. So we've had this really interesting mystery and trying to solve what happened to the Hunters. What was their life really like? Because everything we reconstructed is through their stuff. I personally think historic preservation is one of the top things that we need to be focusing on in the country, for a number of reasons. I think, of course, everybody's sort of go-to answer is we can all learn from the past, and that's true. But I think it's more important because it explains to us, it informs kind of who we are today. What are some of the things of human invention that were so amazing in the 19th century that we've been able to work on, today? For instance, we have an EKG machine, ECG machine, electrocardiogram in the house. And you can imagine being someone with heart issues in the turn of the century, and how that became something that now is just so easy for us. And seeing that progress over time, seeing that change in human innovation, I think is one of the main reasons to have things preserved. Historic house, so we're very different than a lot of museums that you go to, and I think what's different about us and what's important is we're so immersive. You come here and you really feel like Mrs. Hunter's letting you into the house, that she's telling you go have a look around upstairs. You don't feel like everything's behind a case. You'll see in the museum we rarely use cases, and if we do, it's just because something's really fragile, and if it gets bumped, it's going to fall apart. Or light, light's a big killer for historic objects. I've been interested in history since, primary school field trips. I've always been a very spiritual person, and I've always sort of felt the past around me in some way. And I remember the first time I came to this house, I was fresh out of high school. I think I was 18 maybe. And there had been an ad in the paper back when the paper used to be something you looked at, and it said they were looking for volunteers to give tours at this property, and if you liked afternoon tea, it was a good fit for you. And I have all these memories of going to this tea house downtown with my grandma, and I loved, the dainty little teacups and putting singular sugar cubes in and waiting for the little lemon bars to come out. And that just felt so immersive to me. And I remember when I came here and I met the previous director, that I came in and I just immediately felt like, okay, this is home. That was almost 12 years ago. So I've been here quite some time, and over the years, you fall in love with the house and the story and the people that were here. But I think what's kept me here really is the people that are here, that volunteer, the people who are a part of staff that really have taken this on as a second home. This is family for them. We like to joke and call ourselves like the island of misfits, because we're all just a little weird. We're all just a little different. A lot of people here struggle with mental illness, and this is an outreach, for them. This is a place for them to come and feel like I may have my own inner issues, but I can contribute in some way. And this house has really become that sort of refuge for everyone, myself included. I can't think of anyone who enjoyed the pandemic. I think there's this misconception that if you have depression or another mental illness, that maybe you like being alone. But not for a year and a half or whatever it's been now. Nobody wants to be alone that long, For me personally, I have a 5-year-old with autism, and working from home was not fun. Him not going to school was not fun. He's supposed to be in pre-K and he needs the services. And I was pregnant during the pandemic with my second one. So being pregnant at home, working from home with a special needs kid, and my husband working from home, it's just too much. It was too much. For most of us, it was really difficult. Most of us are not really social by nature, but we're really social with each other. And to not have that outlet where we could just come in here and hang out. We operate like a small family business. So for us to have to shut our doors and tell our volunteers, a lot of whom either don't have family in the area, they're alone, some of them are older, or don't have transportation, that they're going to be exiled, essentially. It's really hard. It was really hard having to tell them no. We have one volunteer in particular that's actually a Columbine survivor, and she did not have family in the area. She was by herself, and I just knew that this was really going to take a toll on her mental health, not being able to come in. So even though, we were afraid, everybody was afraid, I think, at the beginning, by month, 2, I said, we have to be open. We have to find a way to be open. We don't have to be open to the public, but we need to be open to each other. Mask up. We're going to come up to the museum and we're going to, have a movie night, or we're going to have dinner, or just come and sit and have tea and chat, because you need to get out of the house. You need to remember that we're still here. We still care about you. And it became almost like a crusade for us. Like, how do we reopen? How do we do that? And we tried to find ways for everyone, volunteer, staff, members, guests, to feel like we were still there, And I think that was a big struggle for most businesses, and to still feel relevant during the pandemic. I think people are a little bit nicer in some way. Whenever you work in any forward-facing customer service industry, you're always going to get someone who, is a negative Nancy, or you can't do anything to please them. And I've had a lot less of that. But people are just so excited, just come to one of our afternoon teas that we haven't had in a year, and to be able to sit in the dining room without a mask and eat. It's like people are starting to appreciate the little things that maybe they didn't appreciate before. And I've just noticed people are just so excited to get out, and we're seeing them come back, and we're seeing all of our stuff sell out, and we're having tours every day. And, that's great from a business standpoint, but I'm happy to see nice people. So much of this pandemic has brought out so much negativity in the middle of the election, and all these ideas about coronavirus isn't real, and all these other things going on. There's been so much person on person negativity for so long, and it's nice to just not see that. Yeah. If people are coming to visit, usually what I will tell them is that if they want to come to a historic home that hasn't been overly curated, where we're not trying to, push some particular ideal, and they want to just see what life was like for a family at the time that they should come here. Because, like I said earlier, over 90% of what we have is original. I mean, we are still finding things in drawers. We have toothpaste that we have in the bathroom that we found in a drawer, We are not here to create a story. We're here to just have out the things of the past that are authentic, and authenticity is really, who we are. So, of course, are a big, happy family. We're always looking for volunteers, and honestly, we couldn't exist without them. We're small staff, and some of our volunteers are just so fantastic and give so much time and energy. And I would say if you feel like you belong in the Victorian era and you feel like you're a little bit of a weirdo, you probably would belong here. So you should give us a call. You should try to come here and volunteer, because we have something for you, I promise. We're a really warm, welcoming environment, and we're a good intro into the museum world for people. So I would say that I just feel like historic things embody the past and help us sort of inform the future, but also I feel like a historic house is a living, breathing thing. There's a lot about this house that really just, it feels almost like it has its own soul. Every house has a different feeling to it. And this one, we've had a number of people, come through and, I feel this and I feel that, and not a whole lot of ghostly experiences, so to speak, but just a lot of feelings in this house. And I think this house, the soul that it possesses, is really one of just family and warmth and love, and everybody just feels really light and happy in this house.